So there's a new political party that's been launched. I say new. Apparently, it's a few months old, but it's being sort of marketed as new. Well, a few months is quite new. I was going to do something of sort of a reaction video where I just went around the site for the first time, looked at their policies, and reacted and sort of said what I thought. Like, does it sound plausible? Is it giving us any sort of meat on the bones? Is it just a bit vague? Um, And even if I didn't particularly like it, how informative is it? Are they left wing, right wing, authoritarian, libertarian? Where are they on the spectrum? Are they in an interesting niche for the UK? But I've been through this website. I did record and I just had to delete because it was getting so rambly, purely because I had to read between the lines entirely. So this will be a quicker video, just giving a bit of a sort of summary of this site and say spoilers ahead, but there's not a lot on here. It doesn't tell you very much about who they are. But okay, we will just go through and I'll just give you an idea. So stand for something or fall for anything. Okay, so what are you telling us? We should stand for something. Right, what are we going to stand for? Hashtag one voice. Okay, so we're going to all be united behind one thing. For us to be united against one thing, it has to be pretty niche, pretty clear. You know, we're not all going to be united against behind a 200-point manifesto. Just a clear message, right? You'd think? No. The Taking Initiative Party is a political party registered in Britain, focusing on providing a voice to the British people who want to change Britain for the better. So it's the party that wants to change Britain for the better, or just providing a voice to the British people who want to change Britain for the better? I mean, that's what the political process does, provides a voice. You might say, yes, we can provide a better voice. We've got a better grasp of the issues, or we've got better ideas. But you've got to do that, and they don't. So yeah, just again, let's have a look. I'm sort of recording this anyway because I just wanted to highlight how little they tell you. They're asking for money. They've not made a lot so far, but they've made some. People are giving them money for nothing. Absolutely vacuous, and it seems so deceptive. If I created a political party today, if I didn't give detailed policy, I'd at least give you an idea of where I sat politically. I'm different from this party because, I'm different from that party because. These are the sort of things I'm most interested in. That at the absolute least. I'll probably give you some assurances that I'm going to do something. You know, I've got a team. There's this many people. I've got some experienced people. I've got some good ideas. I've got something for you to put your money behind. And it's staggering how little there is here. I mean, they say a manifesto is going to be added, but so good, great, then we can critique that. But at the moment, so many words, so little information. So just to prove what I'm saying. So about us. So we've been established by a group of British business people. That is the most you're going to find out about the people who established this. Some from working class backgrounds, should probably have another hyphen there, who felt like many others across the country that we've become politically homeless. Without the hyphen, it seems like you're saying only those with working class backgrounds felt politically homeless, not everybody. Anyway, we founded the party to create meaningful politics. We will inspire people to get out and vote. Oh, here we go. Yeah, no, they're not going to give you anything inspirational. We want to put forward candidates for election who truly represent their community and who will deliver on campaign promises. Okay, so you're saying something that every political party since the dawn of time has said. That we're going to represent the areas and we're going to deliver. It's like, you need to tell me why I should vote for you, not the other guy. You're not doing so. We offer practical policies, except we don't yet. We don't have any policies. With honesty, transparency and accountability at the core of everything we do. Good. But then again, who doesn't stand for that? I know I'm hammering home the point somewhat, but it almost feels like a parody. Like they've written, we're the nice party. We promise to care. We promise to make things better. And we will be clear, we'll be accountable, and we'll do it for you. For you. Change you can believe in. One voice. and yet tell you absolutely nothing about what they stand for. Our background is in business, and we believe that business has a positive part to play in community. Okay, who doesn't believe that? Through entrepreneurship, employment, and empowerment. We also believe in responsible business that contributes to society. Right, so I will not vote for the irresponsible business party. Like, again, no one believes in the opposite of what you're saying. So what's the point? Taking initiative can see a brighter future for the UK, where everyone has a chance to make a difference and to thrive. We want to build a society where people who take the initiative to work towards a better Britain are rewarded, with excellent schools, world-leading healthcare and a flourishing economy. Again, that is the basic structure of all party manifestos. There will always be a schools section, there will always be a healthcare, there will always be an economy section. No party is saying, we don't think schools, healthcare or economy are terribly important. So there's some news here, and this is, spoiler alert, this is where you actually get a bit of what they actually believe in. So I'll just avoid that entirely, just to keep hammering home my point about how they believe in nothing according to their website, or the main sections. So like, here's their mission statement. Their mission statement does not provide a mission statement, as far as I can see. A mission statement should say, right, we believe that we need to fix these things, and this is the vague outline how we're going to do it. We're concerned about, I don't know, what could it be? How we're going to make new trade deals post-EU. That's what we're concerned about. We want to make them effective, and these are the criteria by which we judge them to be effective. No, none of that. Instead, so you can read through all this if you wish, but instead, look at these bullet points. The world's gripped by the effects of a pandemic. Okay, so what are you going to do about it? Oh, nothing. Move on. We're leaving the EU. Digital technologies are happening. Corporation tax avoidance is standard. We'll get onto that in a minute. Unprecedented levels of wealth are hoarded by a few super rich. Inequality is a thing. Children live in poverty and food bank usage is the norm. Bad things are happening. We want to have a voice against them. Everyone already has a voice against them. Nobody's in favour of these things, to be clarified in a second, but they just have different ideas about how we solve these issues. Urgent attention is needed for housing, education, benefits, taxation, knife crime. Again, sections of everybody's manifestos. We're having a manifesto. Good. We believe that Britain's strength lies in its people. Yes, so does everyone. No one is saying Britain's amazing because of the quality of its sheep. Like, everybody says this. Let's make a better UK for everyone. I'm not going to say it. I am. Everybody says this. You're not telling me anything. So let's just go back to those last 2 points, because I think they give you actually an idea or an inkling of the politics here. Like I say, at the moment we don't know if you're left wing, right wing, fascists, communists. We don't know if you want to abolish things or introduce new things. Are you pro-tax, pro-tax cutting? Are you high regulation, low regulation? Not a clue. But say, this gives you an idea. So they say tax avoidance by corporations is standard. Okay, well, what do you mean? Because what does tax avoidance mean? Tax avoidance means corporations, well, in this case it means corporations, but it means people avoiding paying more tax than they otherwise would. Okay, I think nowadays that is sort of implied to be something suspect. So, oh, you're avoiding paying taxes. But there are different forms of tax avoidance. I mean, there's evasion, that's not avoidance, that's the illegal form, tax evasion. So we always are doing different things to clamp down on that. Avoidance is legally avoiding how much paying too much tax, or what you think might be too much tax. And there are illegitimate ways of doing that. There are using overseas tax havens in a suspect way, so pretending that that's where your main base of operations is, and making losses in the UK so that you make less, pay less overall tax. That's a suspect way of doing it. But you can legitimately have good reason to be in a tax haven. And of course, you can avoid taxes in other ways. I mean, governments encourage tax avoidance to some degree, like with deals. So they'll say, for example, hey, you big corporation that we really want to come to our city and create jobs. if you come here, we'll give you a tax break. That is essentially government-run avoidance. They're saying you will not pay the same level of tax that you would otherwise if you do this for us. I mean, just again to illustrate that tax avoidance can be a suspect thing, but can also be entirely legitimate. If you as an individual have a pension, well, you're engaged in tax avoidance because you're not being taxed on the money that you put into a pension. I mean, I won't sit here and talk about pensions all day, but essentially the way it works is that when you put money into a pension, you get the tax that you have already paid in income tax, you get that refunded onto that contribution. So in effect, you haven't paid any tax on it. You'll get taxed down the line when you come to take that money out, but that money has hopefully grown quite considerably. So in effect, you're not paying any tax on that growth. Interest-free savings, interest-free interest, or I've entirely screwed that up by calling it interest-free interest, but you know what I mean. in interest-free growth. Anyway, I do work in pensions, or at least I have recently, and I shouldn't be getting things like that wrong, but of all the 3 or 4 people that will get to this point, I'm sure no one will mind. Anyway, so I don't want to read too much into that, but I'm kind of forced to by the lack of information on this site. It just seems naive to me. I don't think that suggests any kind of political persuasion, saying, oh no, that corporations are avoiding tax. So what? Are they doing so illegitimately? Well, they are, yes, but tell me how? How are they doing it illegitimately? What holes are there in government policy that you fill? Right, we have unprecedented levels of wealth hoarded by a few super rich. Do we? I mean, we probably do have unprecedented amounts of wealth controlled in some way by a small number of individuals. Is it hoarded? I mean, usually it's in the form of the shares they own in their own companies that are then purchased by our good friend pension funds, and obviously are a key part of actually operating that company. I mean, there are no doubt some that have big pots of money sitting in bank accounts, but I'm not convinced that's a massive problem. I mean, inequality by itself is not an issue. What matters is what illegitimate forms of power does that give those at the top? Can they really? How much can they do to control people lower down that hierarchy? Can they, kick them out of their homes? Can they force them to work back-breakingly long days to afford bread? And, I'm sure there are possibly abuses, but it doesn't feel like a big issue. I mean, there may be issues within it. There may be some workers' rights that need bumping up, but just the very fact that there are some people with lots of money, that doesn't feel like an issue to me. And maybe this is a hint. These are people who do think that we need to spread the wealth more evenly in some form. You can do that. You can do that well. You can do that badly. Or it might again just be a little bit of naivety about what the problem is here and how simple it is and how appealing that sort of statement is to people. Then we go on to actually inequality in general. It says inequality in the UK society gets only worse. I think it probably means only gets worse. Gets only worse. Does that mean the same thing? Possibly. Again, inequality in UK society. Inequality is not itself necessarily a bad thing. Certain forms are, certain forms aren't. So I won't read too much into what they mean, because here we go. They've expanded it a little here. So I assume what they mean here. These are 2 examples. Children living in poverty and food bank use the norm. I mean, it is normal to some degree that there are food banks. It's not normal for people to be using them. I don't know what percentage of the population are, but it's not a large enough. It's certainly not a norm. Of course, I don't want to sort of downplay the significance of people having to use them, but at the same time, the main reason for the increase in the use of food banks is the increase in food banks. That is, people will use them because they're there. Um, but of course, if they're there, you have to assume that they're there, or that more of them are appearing because they are feeding some legitimate need. Um, what percentage of people using a food bank genuinely do need to use it? I don't know. I think it's probably relatively high. What percentage of people using a food bank could get by otherwise? Probably again pretty high, but I'm not saying they should. It probably does provide a very useful lifeline. What percentage of people using a food bank are using it to help themselves have other luxuries? I think that's probably quite high. I reckon there's probably people who've um, gone to the food bank to buy food that they can't afford purely because they know there's that food bank, and so they've spent that money on a few beers, a few cigarettes. It sounds like I'm explaining away, invoking a stereotype here, but I think it's a stereotype that's probably true. That you do get a lot of people who are struggling, are in these genuinely difficult situations, who spend an inordinate amount of money on those luxuries, on smokes, on drinks, on addictive things, on lottery tickets, on Sky TV, on all those sort of things. And if they got rid of those luxuries, they could afford it. I mean, obviously, a much bigger question about, well, is it legitimate for them to be struggling when people have millions in the bank? What level of help should we give them? How should we do that? The legitimate questions, but just the fact that they exist, I don't think is evidence that there's necessarily massive failings by the current party in power, by previous governments, etc., etc. I mean, to some extent, there's always going to be somebody who's struggling, but who's struggling through no fault of anyone else. They've put themselves in that position. Again, I'm not saying that's the majority of everyone. I have no idea what percentage of people that is, but there's always going to be some. So just the existence of people in that situation doesn't prove that we need another political party to come in and solve the issue. Whether the existing political parties have been good at dealing with that issue or not, don't know. Very difficult to assess. Something I've looked at in quite some detail before, and I just don't know. So again, I'm not warming to this party just because they mention it. Another thing, again, I've probably rambled quite a bit about this, so I'll speed this up. But they've said that there's children living in poverty. There are. How many? We have no idea. The government's working on a new definition of poverty at the moment, because the old one, which I think originates from the Brown government, was very sort of comparative. So it sort of said, I think I'm quoting this from memory, so this probably isn't entirely accurate, but it's something along the lines of, if your household earns less than 60% of the national average wage, you're in poverty. So a child in that household would be in poverty. But that doesn't take into account what benefits those people get. At least I don't think it does. What housing are you living in? Are you could be living in a house that you inherited and you pay no rent, and yet your income is so low that you're technically in poverty. You've got one child. You've got absolutely no expenses other than you don't have anything you really need to pay for apart from household bills and food. You've got no problem whatsoever. But by that definition, just based on income, just based on it relative to the average, that kid's in poverty. That's not a helpful measure. I want to know, do you legitimately struggle to feed that child? Not just to feed, to shelter, to keep your house warm. If you do, then I'm genuinely concerned about that. If you just happen to earn substantially less than somebody else, then that's bad, and we can have a discussion about the extent to which wealth inequality is and isn't a problem. But just not being able to afford as many luxuries as everybody else, that doesn't put you into poverty. Again, why are you in that situation? Did you have a kid when you shouldn't have, which is, I think it's actually probably nowadays a controversial thing to say. But I've got different levels of sympathy for someone who, I don't know, they've just come out of university, they get a really, really good job, they find what thinks to be a partner for life very soon after. He's got a really good job as well. They think, you know what, let's have a kid early. We can afford it, we're ready, or, our relationship's stable, go. And then he gets killed in a car accident, and her parents have to spend all their money they did have on medical bills for one of them, and suddenly no support, no primary, no assuming he's primary because she's had to stay at home with the child. How dare I assume those gender roles, I know. That person suddenly struggles, and yeah, I can perfectly see how we want a society in which that person gets some level of support, or certainly a level of support, but a good level of support. But I can also imagine that person who just came out of school and went, what am I going to do in my life? That job looks hard. I know what I'll do, I'll just get pregnant. Gets pregnant with somebody who is not the best choice, and if they even stick around, is not earning very much. And they're somewhat dependent on benefits for almost the rest of their lives. Now, I don't want that person, that child who had absolutely no input to this decision, I certainly don't want them living on the streets, but if they are not getting much in the way of luxury, fine. I don't see any big problem with that. They've put themselves in that situation. So as long as the child is, able to get the basics for school and be fed, and the mother still has opportunities that she can pursue, great, that's fine. But if that person is going to be classified as in poverty, and that child in poverty, because they don't have much in the way of income, despite perhaps, being given a council house and getting loads of support, I don't want that person to appear in the statistics as a problem that reflects badly on the government, or any government of any day. So the fact that we have people in that form of, inverted commas, poverty is not an issue in itself. But again, I say we don't know exactly how many people there are. I know a lot of work's going into it. What I'm sort of preempting to some degree is one of those sort of parties that says, look, child poverty is at a record high. This is a complete failing. It proves how terrible everybody else is. We care about this. We wouldn't have let this happen. When we're really not talking about poverty. We're talking about terrible statistics. And of course, you need, it's great to point out the problems. Where's the solutions? Anyway, I'm sort of doing what I said I wouldn't do, which is reading too much into things, because we don't have much in the way of information here. But I'll just zip around the site a little bit more, just to give you an idea. So there is a page somewhere about manifesto that isn't here yet. So that says manifesto, but it isn't there yet. Our constitution really does just sort of outline the basics of the party rules. So it's nothing to do with policy. It's just we will have meetings, we will attempt to get people into positions, we will operate like a political party, and these are the basics. So they're saying nothing again here, basically. We want everybody to be able to thrive. Fantastic, that's what everybody wants. We want businesses and communities to be friends. We want to do what we say we're going to do, and we want to restore these old school values. Yeah, everybody says we want to do what we promise. I mean, that's one of the big misnomer, I think is probably the word, that politicians never do what they say they're going to do. In fact, they do. If they make a manifesto commitment, they tend to make, not all of them, but most of them. Where they don't, it's because they've not. It's not because they haven't cared. It's often because they've seen an objective and they didn't get the majority they needed to be able to push it through. There was too much division over exactly how to do it. They were trying, they didn't get there, or something changed. that made what they were attempting to do just, invalid. Of course, often they skirt around it. Like, they don't say we will achieve this. They say we will work towards this, which maybe that's a practical, honest approach, saying we know we can't necessarily achieve this, but we're going to get this part of the way. Or maybe it's a cowardly sort of, we want to achieve this, but we don't want our opposition saying, well, you didn't, did you? So we'll just say we're going to work towards it, even though we probably should have achieved it. I've just been drinking water. I don't know if anyone can hear that. Anyway, must stop grasping at straws. So we've got a link here, Windrush compensation, which I'm going to use that phrase. It sounds an awful lot like virtue signalling. Like, what percentage of people reading this site are actually eligible for compensation from all the Windrush drama? All they're saying really here is, we care about the Windrush people. So, here, you can find out if you're eligible. We'll probably use political capital out of it if you contact us. Don't know, maybe that's me being cynical, maybe it's them being cynical. But yes, there is so little here, and yet you can donate. Look, Karen? Don't know. Somebody has given them 20 quid for some reason. Here's one of the places where you do actually find something of their politics. So this is a particular campaign. This isn't just to set up a party. They want a campaign about stop and search. And I won't read through all this because I read it a second ago, but essentially they say more black males than other groups are stopped and searched. They don't, for some reason, acknowledge why that is, and I assume it's got to be because they statistically are far more likely to be the ones carrying knives, because that is the problem, knife crime, isn't it? So, obviously, simple situation. Police sees a group of kids walking down the road. If those kids are black, the police officer is probably aware that statistically they're more likely to be carrying a knife. So the police officer is statistically more likely to stop them. Is it racial profiling? I guess it is. Is that a problem? I don't see it as being so. But they're not actually saying that is necessarily a problem. What they're saying is that we don't want people of that ethnicity, or any minority ethnicities, we don't want them building up this negative perception of the police because they feel they're being unfairly targeted. Now, I would have thought the answer to that is to explain what I just explained. Policemen aren't going down the street going, better stop that black kid because, I don't like black people, or, without any reason, I think that black kid's got a knife because black people look shifty to me. That's why I'm not going to be stopping that Puerto Rican grandmother at the other side of the road. No, it's based on the reality that they know that this is where the problem is. I would have thought that was the solution, explaining to these people that, by these people, who do you mean? What do you mean these people? People who would have a problem with police predominantly, or not overwhelmingly, disproportionately stopping black male youths. If you think that's unfair, you haven't looked at statistics, or you haven't understood why a police officer would do that. But no, what they're essentially saying is we need to we need to change the way in which these interactions happen. I don't know what they mean by that. They sort of hint that part of the problem might be that, they say that part of the problem might be that officers don't make clear what powers they do and don't have, which is in here somewhere. I've lost it. There we go. Fair enough. So perhaps we need to ask police to be more clear on what they can and can't do. Do we need a campaign to convince them of that? I don't know. They may well already think that. For all I know, there's already a paper on this that's from the police authorities saying, this is what we've looked at with stop and search, these are our findings, this is what we're going to do. I'm assuming, based on the fact that they've got this here, that hasn't happened. The police need to be told this. But, if I were assessing whether to donate to this, which I'm not, because I don't like giving people money when I don't know much about them, I'd want to know what it is the police think, and why these people know something the police don't, and what they're going to do with this money, how they're going to convince the police. They don't really give us much about that. So instead they say, we want to change government policy, so not just guidelines, actual policy about how police officers interact with people, and BAME community specifically. BAME meaning black and minority ethnic, which is interesting, not that acronym, but the fact they call it BAME communities. So it's not just we want to change how the police interact with people who happen to be black or from a minority ethnic type, but no, we want to change how they interact with those communities, as if they're talking only about those places where people are sort of almost segregated into black or minority ethnic areas, groups. So how we do policing in that Pakistani area, that Bangladeshi area, that Afro-Caribbean area, that needs to change. I don't know if they mean it should work differently in those different areas, or it should change in light of experience in those areas. So I'm not sure what they're saying here. They also want to change in law in relation to police officers being held to account for wrongdoing, not being able to retire or simply resign to avoid action being taken. I mean, it depends on the action, doesn't it? If it's criminal action, then their resigning is irrelevant. They'll still be pursued. If it's just a ticking off, then yeah, they can avoid it by leaving. I mean, that's the same as any job. Why would you expect further action? If I were in some sort of call centre and somebody called me up and I didn't like their tone and I just shouted at them down the phone, then yeah, I'd avoid consequences in a sense, if I just quit rather than waiting to be fired. But good luck getting a good reference. And that'd be the same for any police officer. I mean, obviously, if I retired, I'd dodge it entirely, but I don't know what consequences they're expecting. And then mandatory compensation for anybody who's wrongfully detained or stop and search powers are abused. I mean, I don't know why a mandatory. I mean, I don't know how it works currently. I mean, does some sort of hearing has to happen surely, and they say, right, well, you've been materially impacted to this degree, and this is why we're going to achieve this money. I don't know why you need a mandatory amount. So why thus? So they've got experience. Cool. What are they going to do? Going to have a short documentary. What? You can do that on your phone. Why do you need money? But you want a professional one. National campaign. They want to put a lot of effort in, but I don't know what they want. You're just restating that you want this mandatory thing. I mean, I know you want this mandatory thing. I don't know, mandatory payment level. I don't know why. I like this idea about giving them some improved training. Again, I don't know why they think the police can't do that themselves. Why you need to be involved. But yeah, I don't know what more they think they need. The police, sorry, I don't know what sort of different approach they think they should be taking. So there's a lot of information here, but it doesn't really give me enough to agree with them. What is it that the police are getting wrong? Why is it that you think that they can't fix that themselves? What are you offering? Which can make a documentary to tell them how wrong they are. Okay, I'm not convinced. And you as a party, what do you believe in? You believe in establishing one voice, making the world better? Are you going to broadly increase taxes, decrease taxes, increase regulation, decrease regulation? We don't know. I really don't like that they are so not non-committal, just they don't provide any information. Not only is that it not only that it feels deceptive, but it also feels insulting toward the other parties. Like, one of those classic cases of, we care about people, we want to fix things, we want to make a better place. So what are you implying? That all the other parties don't really care about people, that don't want to make the place the world a better place? That along with asking for money about something that's not terribly clear, I don't like it. It doesn't present them in a good light in my mind. So last thing, because this is getting ridiculously long after I rambled about those two particular points. Last thing I want to pick up on, I've lost it now, was under news. Here we go. So news does actually give you a bit of an idea. So I'll just scan through these two quickly. But they want to join the fight for change at the Million People March. Now this apparently happened this weekend. If I were a conspiratorial mind, I'd say, well, 1 million people marched and we didn't hear about it. The media don't want us to know. But actually, I think probably 1 million people didn't march. Black voices matter. Who's saying they don't? Government got you feeling powerless? Not particularly. We've got you. Join the initiative party so we can all have one voice. Well, we've paraphrased taking the initiative, or cut it down to the initiative now. But what does this mean? You feel like your voice isn't being heard? Well, don't worry, join our party. Well, that would be great if I agreed with you, but I don't know whether I agree with you because you haven't told me what you believe. I mean, yes, it's great for voices that aren't being heard to have people they can support, to have a glossy website, to have a sort of public media voice. But if I don't know what you stand for, I don't know whether I can support you. But they're supporting this march, and I've got this open here. I don't think Martin Luther King's going to be there. But apparently it's, I assume by the fact that he's there that it's some sort of civil liberties thing. Oh dear, Black Lives Matter crew are there. Not a fan of them. Militant headwear, reminiscent of Black Panthers. That's not a good start. Racial separatists, if anyone's not aware of who they are. I don't just say racist; they definitely are racist. But yes, they believe in not just a movement for black empowerment. This idea that, well, black people are uniquely oppressed or uniquely hurt in some way, so we need to uplift those people. And there's some nobility to that. No, the sort of the traditional Black Panther Party was very much, we need to live our separate lives from white people, and that's what they're invoking with the Black Fist and with those sort of militaristic uniforms and silly hats, as shown here. So I mean, maybe they're naive to that. Maybe they don't know that. Maybe they just sort of see, oh, a black movement, we want that. But no, it's not a nice. It's not a symbol with good history. It's not a set of symbols with good history. So they want change. Don't know. I won't say too much about this because I don't know. Anti-racism. Great, we stand against racism. But you're standing against no one. Well, they've actually got definitions of racism here, if you can just about read that. The belief that people's qualities are influenced by their race, and that members of other races are not as good as the members of your own, or the resulting unfair treatment of members of other races. That's weird, isn't it? Belief that people's qualities are influenced by their race. Depends what you mean by qualities. I mean, my ability to outrun a Kenyan Olympian is probably influenced by my race to some degree. There's that. There are racial differences that do change athleticism, that affect athleticism. I'm sure that's not what they mean. They mean like moral quality. Anyway, I'm sidetracking. But yes, my general point there was that, well, yes, very, very few people are racist. There's no racist political parties. The BNP's dead. We don't count them. So yeah, you're not telling me anything compelling, because you're not telling me anything different to what anything anybody else is saying. So they're very supportive of that, which I don't necessarily is a bad thing, but I don't think it's a good thing. This is the last one I'll look at because this has been going on forever. But this is the one I find a bit more concerning, that makes me dislike them. So they say, what does working class actually mean? Does it mean all these things? Working in a factory, yada yada yada. This is a somewhat pointless paragraph. Working class people include black, white, and old. Well, obviously. Here we go. Here's their concern. What unifies them is working class people, the way in which capitalism and its supporting state infrastructure chews them up and spits them out. So the modern economic system, the system that uniquely has done more than anything else to lift people out of poverty, the underpinning of the modern world, that chews them up and spits them out. It gives them the welfare state. It looks after them when they're old, looks after them when they're sick. It finances all of that. It's behind pretty much all modern technology since the Industrial Revolution. That's what capitalism is. That is terrible. Now, maybe that's not what they're saying. They're not saying down with capitalism. Maybe they're just saying the current system, whatever the system might be, doesn't do enough to support people. But then why refer to it as capitalism? Why invoke that word? Because I think the vast majority of people who support capitalism don't go out and say, I support capitalism, because it's just not a question. You don't think to yourself, right, I'm going to pop down to the supermarket and buy these things, but should I really have that choice? Should I have the choice what to do with my own money? Or should I just be collecting rations from a government-run ration house? When I look for a job, should I be looking for a job? Or should I just do the assigned job that the government wants me to do? I don't think anyone thinks that. But that is realistically the alternative to capitalism. Now, capitalism isn't this idea that we should just praise money. That is, an unfortunate current within capitalism. So I'm going to be generous and assume that that's what they're talking about here, that they're after various unpleasant currents within capitalism. They're not saying capitalism itself is doing this and needs to be destroyed. They're not communists. They just think that there are problems within the system. They don't want to tear the whole thing down. They say working class people live precarious lives, face prejudice, have very little power and voice in their day-to-day interactions with work or the state. Little power in their day-to-day interactions with work or the state. It depends what you compare it to. I mean, what power do I have against the state? Well, I can take the government to court. I mean, I have the court system, so the government can't infringe upon my rights. I can, if it comes to it, I can take the government to an international court, and the government will actually listen to it. There's many countries in which that isn't the case. There's many times in history where that wasn't the case. Little power in my work. Well, I've got many rights. If my company says, yeah, we're going to need you to work another 8 hours today, well, I can just say no. If they fire me, I can take them to a tribunal and I'll probably win. So this idea that I don't have very much power against my work or my state, or the state, sorry. I can quit my job and get another one. And I won't be penalised. I can say, well, why did you leave your last job? Just didn't get on with the people. That's fine. Just didn't see there being history to it, or a future to it. I can do all of those things. That's quite a lot of power compared to other times in history and say other countries. What more power do I want? I mean, I'm talking particularly about working class people. saying they have very little power and voice in their day-to-day interactions with work. Well, how many people doing your traditional working class manual things are self-employed nowadays? Lots. That's an awful lot of power in work. That seems a bizarre thing to say. So you want to give people more power, but yeah, great. In what form? I don't. It does. In a way, it says a lot about their philosophy, and in a way, it says very little. Again, maybe I'm being too critical, but it just sounds like naivety. It sounds like you're just summing up negative aspects of people's lives and saying that this is a problem, and that is evidence that you need us because we can point at those problems. Where are your solutions? And why you constantly seem to be implying that other people don't care about these things? I mean, again, with little power, little voice in their interactions with the state. When we have elections, what's your problem? You want more referendums? You want more direct democracy? You populist in that sense? You don't want the civil service keep making all these decisions and the politicians making these decisions? Do you want local referendums? I mean, maybe there's a case for that, but I'd like to know if that's what they think or not. And this is where I'll end, because I think this is the most egregious little point I found. No one has waged class war more than the Tories. What do they mean by class war? Do they mean has attempted to demolish the classes? Attempted to keep the classes as they are? Or set one against the other? Because the Conservative Party is the party that gave us grammar schools, which, gave poor but smart kids an opportunity to go up the class ladder. I mean, I think it's decreased in more recent years, but if you look at various measures of social mobility over the last 50 years, so how likely is it that somebody born to a poor family can climb the rungs and get into the middle or upper classes and earn significantly more compared to their parents, how likely is that to happen? That increases every time there's a Conservative government. So I think the only potential exception is the May government, where it didn't quite happen. But then we've had lots of economic turmoil in the last decade or so, and I can see how opportunities might be more limited when there's major economic things are happening. Or maybe we've just gone far enough that we can't really do that. But I mean, the general trend has been that people in poorer backgrounds are not locked into that. That there are opportunities that they can go to university. And the Conservative Party is hardly a barrier to any of these things. I can't remember exactly who brought in when, but like more recently, a lot of the opposition that the Conservatives have to free tuition fees isn't so that rich people sending kids to university, but poor people sending kids to university should get free tuition. It's not that they're trying to block that. It's more the other way around. They don't want you and me, your average people, paying via our taxes to subsidise rich people sending their kids to university. You might say, well, hang on, it's not just rich people sending their kids to university, it's poor people too. We need to give them a leg up. Well, yeah, that's exactly what the old system was intended to do. That there were fees, but if you were less well off, you either got them subsidised, didn't pay them entirely at all. And where's that money being come from? It's coming from those richer people who can afford to pay the fees. So in essence, you have two systems. You have richer people who can afford to pay the fees, paying the fees, and those who can't not paying the fees, so having them subsidised. So rich people paying for poor people, or you have them free to everyone, which just means everybody paying to subsidise everybody. So everybody paying for those poorer kids who were getting it free or subsidised anyway, but also paying for those more well-off people. Now, I'm not saying that's necessarily an entirely fair summation, but those are the basic principles, and that's why the Conservative Party were opposed to free tuition fees. You know, that's not exactly class war. It's certainly an attack on the poorer kids. So it just seemed bizarre that they'd make that accusation. Really, I mean, here's their evidence. This, whether it be culling trade unions. I mean, I know trade unions see themselves as the representatives of the working class. I mean, they are representatives of certain parts of the working class, but there's plenty of working class people that are not in trade unions and who quite understandably get quite annoyed when trade unions behave badly, which they sometimes do. You know, that office worker going into a relatively low-paid office job in London, finding that they can't get to work because a tube driver is on strike again, is not going to be jumping up and down going, aren't the unions great? Again, I'm not saying that's necessarily an entirely fair summary of the situation, but it's not. Neither is it fair to say that the trade unions represent the working class, and therefore to reduce their power is an attack on the working class. It's not in the interest of certain working class people, but it may well be in the interest of other working class people. I don't think the trade unions. Trade union politics is as class bound as they seem to be suggesting. Anyway, selling the idea that we have more freedom when the state isn't around to support us. I think when the state isn't around to support us, we're more likely to have our rights infringed. But I think at the same time we are likely to have more freedom. I mean, those are very different things. You know, if my employer, as I said, I think a minute ago, if my employer says, right, you need to work stupid amounts of hours tomorrow or you're sacked, if the government doesn't get involved, then actually their freedom to take advantage of me is protected. It's not great freedom, it's not a good freedom, but it's freedom. It's my rights, my working rights that are being infringed upon there, not my freedom. You know, conversely, if I'd said, well, I'm free to say whatever I like on the internet, if the government walks away, yeah, I'm still free to say whatever I like on the internet. It's only when the government says, well, is your speech incitement? Is your speech unpleasant? Does it attack protected characteristics? Is it hate speech? That's only when my speech gets constrained. I say in those examples, I'm somewhat cynical about all things hate speech, but I'm not cynical at all about restrictions on incitement. So it's not a value judgment. I'm not saying the government should never be involved or should always be involved. I'm saying when it isn't involved, I'm more free. I don't think this idea of the government providing freedom. So that's no, I don't agree philosophically with their position there. I don't think it's true that. So they're obviously implying that it's not the case that we're more free without the government. No, we are more free without the government. It's just that our rights aren't so protected. That's the struggle of liberal democracy, left versus right, traditionally. That the right say that states should butt out of most things so that we are free, and the left say that the state should be more involved so that our rights are protected. It's a balance. You need a little bit of both. So going all in on one side suggests this is a very sort of left-wing group. And here's the real thing that you can just sense how incredulous they are. You know, the Conservative Party, they sometimes suggest that inequality is good for us. What a ridiculous thing to say. What type of inequality? I mean, if I'm earning £1 million an hour and my neighbour who can't work through no fault of his own because he's ill, is going to be turfed out on the street and die in the gutter, then that level of inequality is terrible, most certainly. But equally, if I've spent the entire day making fantastic videos like this that everybody loves and are really, really helpful, and I get paid a lot of money for doing so, then great. And if my neighbour sat in bed all day because he didn't want to go to the job centre and has made no effort whatsoever, then the fact that I've got more money at the end of the day, that inequality is perfectly valid. So it just seems strange to be seemingly making this claim that it's ridiculous to suggest that inequality is ever good. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. Depends entirely on what type of inequality you mean. I don't expect to have an equal shot at being the next, what's a popular football team nowadays? I don't think I'm going to have an equal shot of playing for Manchester City next season as, what's he called, Lionel Messi? Lionel? He's Spanish, isn't he? He pronounced it funny. Let's call him Lionel. It looks like Lionel. I could have just called him Messi and got away with the fact, hidden the fact that I can't pronounce his first name. But no, I don't expect to have an equal shot of playing for Manchester City as the best player in the world. That unequal treatment of us both, unequal treatment, is entirely fine. And the fact that he's going to get, wherever he ends up, paid more money than me because he's got such a marketable skill, absolutely fine. The extent to which he does, the fact that he's going to earn absolutely millions, I'm almost certainly not going to, I mean, that's annoying, but I don't think it's entirely unjust. Say the extent, perhaps, but I don't know what you do about that. If they've got any great ideas about how we can close the wealth gaps, then great. But at the same time, we can't just be saying, well, all inequalities are terrible. You know, I'm not going to call these people communists, but you know, if you're going to take it that literally and say, well, everything needs to be equal, everybody should earn the same, everybody should work the same, then that's where you're heading, isn't it? It seems like an incredible thing to say without any support, as if everybody thinks that all inequality is bad, and it's incredible to suggest otherwise. Anyway, I think we'll leave it there because I've been waffling for an hour, or nearly an hour, and I don't think, I'm not even sure if I'll bother uploading this. I'll have a look. I'll watch it myself and see if I was saying anything vaguely interesting. Or I might just save it and watch it again if this party ever comes up in the news again. I've got a suspicion they might just disappear entirely because, I mean, you can browse it yourself. Just try and find anything that tells you anything about this group. You know, they care. Here we go. We care about benefits, education, housing. Who doesn't? What are you going to do about it? Don't know. Going to accept money though, aren't you? So I don't. Maybe they'll expand it. Maybe they'll disappear. I don't know. For now, I'm going to stop waffling.